What if Daenerys hatched her dragons in Winterfell's crypts? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The training yard of Winterfell echoes with the clash of wooden swords as dawn breaks over the ancient stronghold. Jon Snow circles his opponent with careful steps, his dark eyes focused on the young woman across from him. Daenerys holds her practice blade steady, her brown-dyed hair bound back in a simple braid that conceals the silver beneath. At 14, she moves with the fluid grace of a natural fighter, though something in her violet eyes suggests depths that no Stark child has ever possessed. Robb Stark watches from the sidelines, his own sword forgotten in his hand. The heir to Winterfell grins as Daenerys presses her attack, driving Jon back toward the armory wall. For 13 years, she has been his sister in all but blood, yet moments like these remind him that Dany carries herself differently than any northern girl he has ever known. Jon parries a quick thrust and counters with a sweeping blow that Daenerys catches on her blade. The impact sends vibrations up both their arms, but neither gives ground. They have sparred like this countless times since childhood, and their styles complement each other perfectly. Jon fights with the methodical patience of the North, while Daenerys brings something fiercer, something that burns just beneath the surface. "Yield," she says, pressing her blade against his throat. Jon laughs and drops his sword. "I yield, sister." The word hangs in the morning air. Sister. It is what they have always called each other, though both know the truth is more complicated. Daenerys Targaryen, last daughter of the Dragon Kings, ward of House Stark, and the most dangerous secret in the Seven Kingdoms. Sir Rodrik Cassel approaches them, his white whiskers bristling with approval. "Fine work, the both of you. Jon, your footwork has improved. Daenerys, remember to keep your guard higher when you press forward." She nods respectfully to the master-at-arms, but her attention is already drifting toward the crypts beneath the castle. For weeks now, she has felt drawn to those dark passages in ways she cannot explain. Her dreams have been filled with fire and stone, with whispers that seem to echo from the depths of Winterfell itself. Meanwhile, in the solar overlooking the Godswood, Eddard Stark stands beside a tall window, watching his children practice. Catelyn sits at her writing desk, quill poised over a letter, but her attention is focused entirely on her husband's worried expression. "The Raven arrived this morning," Ned says quietly. "Robert leaves King's Landing within the fortnight. He will be here before the month is out." Catelyn sets down her quill. After 13 years of marriage, she knows that tone in her husband's voice. It is the sound of a man carrying a burden too heavy to share, yet too dangerous to keep entirely to himself. "How long has it been since he last visited Winterfell?" she asks. "Not since the year after the rebellion. Not since—" Ned trails off, but they both know what he cannot say. "Not since he brought home 2 Targaryen children and convinced Robert that they had died with the rest of their family. The lies have grown heavy over the years. Daenerys Stormborn, officially dead at Dragonstone, instead lives as Daenerys Stone, acknowledged bastard of a distant Stark cousin. Her brother Viserys was given the surname Snow, and told that his memories of dragons and kings were fever dreams from a childhood illness. The truth is known only to Ned, Catelyn, and Maester Luwin, who helped arrange their secret arrival 14 years ago. She looks more like her father every year, Catelyn observes, watching Daenerys help Jon to his feet in the yard below. The purple eyes are harder to hide now that she's nearly grown. Ned nods grimly. Robert's hatred of the Targaryens has only deepened with time. If he discovers what we have done, he does not need to finish the thought. They both know Robert would see harboring Targaryen heirs as the highest form of treason. In the training yard, Daenerys sheaths her practice sword and begins walking toward the main keep. Something pulls at her thoughts, a restlessness that has been growing stronger each day. The sensation leads her not toward her chambers, but down the narrow steps that descend into Winterfell's ancient crypts. The ironwood door creaks open at her touch, revealing the long corridor lined with stone pillars and silent tombs. Torches flicker in iron brackets, casting dancing shadows across the carved faces of long-dead Starks. Daenerys has walked these passages many times before, but today feels different. Today, the very air seems to whisper her name. She moves deeper into the crypts than she has ever gone before, past the familiar tombs of recent lords of Winterfell, past the older sections where the stone grows rougher and the shadows deeper. The flickering torchlight grows dim behind her, but she presses on, guided by an instinct she cannot name. In a narrow alcove she has never noticed before, her fingers trace patterns in the ancient stone. The wall feels different here, older somehow, as if it belongs to a time before the Starks claimed Winterfell as their own. When she presses her palm against the carved surface, she feels warmth beneath her hand. That is when she sees them. 3 shapes, half buried in the rubble of a partially collapsed section. Dragon skulls, smaller than the great beasts of legend, but unmistakably draconic. Their eye sockets stare at her across the centuries, and for a moment, Daenerys could swear she hears the echo of ancient roars. How did you get down here so far? She spins at the sound of Bran's voice. The youngest Stark boy stands at the entrance to the alcove, his eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. At 7 years old, he has inherited the Stark gift for moving silently when he chooses to. I could ask you the same thing, Daenerys replies, though her heart is still racing from her discovery. Does your father know you wander down here, alone? Bran shrugs with the casual indifference of a child who has never truly known danger. Old Nan says there are older things than Starks buried in these crypts. She says some of them are better left sleeping. Daenerys looks back at the dragon skulls, 3 of them, ancient and weathered, yet somehow still magnificent. She wonders how they came to be here, so far from the lands where dragons once ruled. Something about them calls to her, makes her want to reach out and touch the bone that once held fire and fury. We should go back, she says finally, though every instinct rebels against leaving this place. Your mother will be looking for you. As they climb the narrow steps back toward the light, Bran chatters about his lessons with Maester Luwin, but Daenerys barely hears him. Her mind is still in that dark alcove, still wondering about the skulls she found buried beneath Winterfell. She does not yet understand what they mean, but she can feel their importance, like a weight in her chest. The dragons are dead, have been dead for more than a century. Yet standing before those ancient skulls, Daenerys felt something she has never experienced before. For the first time since coming to Winterfell as a baby, she felt like she had found something that truly belonged to her. Above them, Ned Stark continues his conversation with Catelyn, unaware that his greatest fear and his deepest secret are about to collide. Robert Baratheon rides north with his retinue, carrying 14 years of pent-up hatred for all things Targaryen. And deep beneath Winterfell, in the darkness where dead kings sleep, ancient magic stirs in response to the blood of the dragon. That night, Daenerys finds herself unable to sleep. The image of the dragon skulls burns in her mind like a fever dream, calling to her from the depths below. She slips from her chamber in the dead of night, padding silently through the corridors of Winterfell with the practiced stealth of a girl who has spent years moving unseen. The ironwood door to the crypts yields to her touch once more. This time, she carries a torch to light her way through the winding passages. The flame casts dancing shadows on the stone faces of dead Starks, their granite eyes seeming to watch her descent into the darkness. When she reaches the alcove where the dragon skulls rest, Daenerys kneels beside them, studying their ancient forms in the flickering torchlight. The bone is weathered and grey, yet something about them seems to pulse with dormant power. As her fingers trace the curve of an empty eye socket, she notices something she missed before. A loose stone in the wall behind the skulls shifts under her touch. When she pries it free, it reveals a hidden cavity carved deep into the rock. Inside, wrapped in oiled leather that has somehow survived the centuries, lie 3 objects that make her heart stop. Dragon eggs, 3 of them, each the size of her head, their surfaces covered in intricate scales that shimmer even in the dim torchlight. One is deep green, like the forests of the north, another cream-colored like fresh snow, and the third black with swirls of deep red that seem to move in the dancing flames. Daenerys lifts the black egg with trembling hands. It feels warm against her palms, warmer than stone should be after centuries in the cold darkness. For a moment, she could swear she feels something shift within it, as if something sleeps just beneath the surface, waiting. You should not be here alone, child. She spins, clutching the egg to her chest, to find Maester Luwin standing at the entrance to the alcove. The old man's grey robes make him almost invisible in the shadows, but his eyes reflect the torchlight as he steps closer. Maester Luwin, she breathes. I was just... You were following your blood, he says quietly, his gaze moving from her face to the eggs in the hidden chamber. I wondered when this day would come. There is sadness in his voice, and something that might be fear. Daenerys sets the black egg back with its companions, though her hands shake as she releases it. You know what these are, she says. It is not a question. Luwin nods slowly. They were brought here during the final days of Robert's rebellion. A dying knight, loyal to your father, carried them north when King's Landing fell. He begged Lord Rickard to hide them, to keep them safe should the dragon blood ever return to claim them. Lord Rickard is dead, Daenerys whispers. Aye, burned alive in the throne room by your father's command. Yet his son honored the promise. Luwin steps closer, his chain clinking softly in the silence. Ned Stark has kept many secrets over the years, child. This is perhaps the heaviest. Daenerys stares at the eggs, her mind reeling. All her life, she has been told that her family's legacy was ash and bone, that the dragons died out more than a century ago. Yet here before her lie the seeds of that ancient power, hidden beneath the very castle where she learned to walk and fight and laugh. Are they real? She asks. Real as the skulls beside them, real as the blood in your veins. Luwin's voice grows gentle. But they are stone now, child, fossilized by the passage of time. Whatever magic they once held has long since faded. Yet even as he speaks, Daenerys can feel warmth radiating from the eggs. She says nothing of this to the Maester, but she knows what she feels. These eggs are not dead stone. They are sleeping, waiting for something to wake them. Meanwhile, in the chambers above, another member of House Targaryen stirs restlessly in his bed. Viserys Snow tosses and turns, his dreams filled with fragments that make no sense. A red door somewhere warm and safe, the sound of waves crashing against black stone. A woman with silver hair singing a lullaby in a language he almost remembers. He wakes with tears on his cheeks, though he does not understand why. At 7 years old, Viserys has been told that these dreams are echoes of a fever that nearly killed him as a child. Master Luwin assures him that the memories will fade with time, that they mean nothing. But lately, the dreams have been growing stronger, especially since that morning when he saw Daenerys emerge from the crypts with dirt on her hands and fire in her eyes. The next morning brings the sound of horses and the clatter of armor in the courtyard. King Robert Baratheon arrives at Winterfell with a retinue that makes the ancient castle feel suddenly small. His royal banner snaps in the cold wind, the crowned stag of his house bold against yellow silk. Daenerys stands with the other Stark children as they assemble to greet their king. She has spent the morning ensuring that every trace of silver is hidden beneath brown dye, that her violet eyes are downcast and unremarkable. She is Daenerys Stone, bastard cousin, ward of House Stark. Nothing more. Robert himself is larger than she expected, though the years haven't been kind to him. Where once stood the demon of the trident, now stands a man grown fat on wine and rich food, his black beard shot through with grey. Yet his blue eyes are still sharp, and they survey the assembled household with the keen interest of a man who has survived more than one conspiracy. Behind him rides the Queen, Cersei Lannister, beautiful and cold as winter ice. Her golden hair catches the morning light, and her green eyes miss nothing as they sweep across the Stark children. For one terrible moment, her gaze lingers on Daenerys, and the young woman feels as if those emerald eyes can see straight through her carefully constructed disguise. "Your Grace," Ned says, bowing low. "Winterfell is yours." Robert laughs, the sound booming across the courtyard. "Ned, you haven't changed a bit. Still as serious as a septon at a funeral." His eyes find the line of children. "And these are your cubs. They've grown since I last saw them." One by one, the Stark children step forward to be introduced. Robb with his auburn hair and easy smile. Sansa, beautiful and courteous. Arya trying to hide her wildness behind proper manners. Bran, wide-eyed with wonder at seeing the king. Little Rickon, clinging to Catelyn's skirts. And then it is Daenerys' turn. "This is Daenerys Stone," Ned says, his voice carefully neutral. "My cousin's daughter from the Vale. She's been our ward these many years." Daenerys curtsies as she has been taught, keeping her eyes lowered. "Your Grace." Robert barely glances at her, but Cersei's attention is more focused. The Queen studies Daenerys for a long moment, taking in her height, her bearing, the shape of her face beneath the brown hair. "Stone, you said," Cersei asks. "What was your father's name, child?" "Marcus Stone, Your Grace," Daenerys replies, reciting the carefully prepared lie. "A knight in service to my lord father's cousin. He died when I was very young." Cersei's eyes narrow slightly. "You have an unusual look about you, almost foreign." Ned steps forward smoothly. "The blood of the first men runs strange sometimes, Your Grace. We see it often enough in the north." Robert waves a dismissive hand. "Enough talk of bloodlines. I need wine and a warm fire. The road from King's Landing has been long and cold." As the royal party moves toward the Great Hall, Daenerys catches sight of another figure in the retinue. Sir Jaime Lannister sits astride a destrier as golden as his hair, his white cloak marking him as a knight of the Kingsguard, the Kingslayer, the man who put his sword through her father's back. For a moment, hatred flares in her chest, so hot and sudden it takes her breath away. This is the man who ended the Targaryen dynasty, who opened the door for Robert's rule. If not for Jaime Lannister, her father might still sit the Iron Throne, and she might be a princess instead of a hidden ward. But then she remembers the stories Ned has told her, of Aerys the Mad King, of the wildfire caches hidden beneath King's Landing, of the madness that consumed her father in his final years. The hatred fades, replaced by something more complex. Grief, perhaps. or relief that she will never have to choose between her blood and her conscience the way Jaime Lannister did. That night, as the great hall fills with the sounds of feasting and laughter, Daenerys slips away once more to the crypts. The dragon eggs call to her more strongly now, their warmth seeming to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She does not know that Robert Baratheon, deep in his cups, has begun to speak of old grievances. She does not know that he has mentioned the dragon spawn he wishes he had killed with his own hands. She does not know that Cersei Lannister has taken note of every word, filing away each detail for future use. All Daenerys knows is that she stands before 3 sleeping dragons, feeling for the first time in her life that she has found something that truly belongs to her. The blood of the dragon runs in her veins, and somewhere deep beneath the stone, ancient fire waits to be reborn. The great hall of Winterfell buzzes with activity as King Robert holds court on his second day in the ancient stronghold. Wine flows freely, and the king's booming laughter echoes off the stone walls as he regales the assembled lords with tales of battles fought and enemies conquered. Daenerys stands near the back of the hall, trying to remain invisible among the household servants and lesser nobles. Her brown hair catches the light from the torches, and she keeps her violet eyes downcast, focused on the rushes beneath her feet. Yet she cannot help but listen as Robert's voice carries across the crowded space. The dragon spawn should have been rooted out, completely, Robert declares, his words slightly slurred from wine. Every last whelp of that mad king's line should have been put to the sword. Mark my words, Ned. As long as any Targaryen blood remains in this world, the realm will never know peace. Across the hall, Ned Stark's face remains carefully neutral, but Daenerys can see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand unconsciously moves toward his wine cup. Catelyn sits beside him, her own expression unreadable, though her fingers grip her cup with white knuckles. "The Targaryen line is finished, Your Grace," Ned says quietly. "The children died on Dragonstone. There are no more dragons." Robert's laugh is harsh. No dragons, perhaps, but dragon blood has a way of surviving. It hides in the shadows, breeds in exile, waits for its chance to reclaim what it believes is rightfully theirs. His blue eyes scan the hall, and for one terrifying moment, they seem to linger on Daenerys. That's why we must remain vigilant. That's why every rumor must be investigated, every whisper followed to its source. From her position near the high table, Queen Cersei watches the exchange with interest. Her green eyes move between Robert and Ned, cataloguing every expression, every pause. When her gaze finds Daenerys in the crowd, it lingers with the calculating attention of a predator studying potential prey. "Tell me about your ward," Cersei says suddenly, her voice cutting through Robert's monologue. "The Stone Girl. She has an interesting look about her." Ned's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. "What would Your Grace like to know?" Her coloring is unusual for a northern girl. That bone structure, the way she carries herself. Cersei tilts her head, studying Daenerys from across the hall. She reminds me of someone, though I cannot place who. "Many of the mountain clans have foreign blood mixed in," Catelyn interjects smoothly. "Trade routes through the Vale bring all manner of people through those lands." Cersei's smile is cold. "Of course. How foolish of me to suspect anything more interesting." The conversation moves on, but Daenerys feels those green eyes on her throughout the evening. When she finally slips from the hall, her heart is beating like a war drum in her chest. She needs air, needs space to think, needs to be anywhere but under the Queen's predatory gaze. She finds Jon Snow in the Godswood, standing before the ancient weirwood tree with its carved face and blood-red leaves. The bastard son of Ned Stark looks as troubled as she feels, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight, filtering through the branches above. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Jon says without turning around. "The Queen suspects something," Daenerys replies, moving to stand beside him beneath the heart tree. "I could see it in her eyes." Jon turns to study her face in the moonlight. "Suspects what?" You've done nothing wrong, haven't I? The words come out more bitter than she intended. My very existence is a crime, Jon. Everything about me is a lie. You're not the only one carrying lies, Jon says quietly. At least you know who your father was. At least you have a name that means something, even if you can't use it. Daenerys looks at him sharply. They have never spoken directly about their shared status as outsiders in the Stark household, the children who don't quite belong but are loved nonetheless. Jon knows nothing of her true heritage, believes her to be exactly what she pretends to be, another bastard finding shelter under Ned Stark's protection. Sometimes I wonder if it would be easier to be no one at all, she says, to have no legacy, no expectations, no weight of history pressing down on your shoulders. Be careful what you wish for, Jon replies with a rueful smile. I've spent my whole life being no one. It's not as freeing as you might think. Before Daenerys can respond, shouts erupt from the direction of the castle. They both turn toward the sound, and what they see makes Daenerys' blood run cold. A small figure plummets from one of the towers, limbs flailing against the night sky before disappearing behind the walls of the inner courtyard. Bran, Jon breathes, and they both run. They find chaos in the courtyard. Bran lies motionless on the hard-packed earth, his small body twisted at an unnatural angle. Catelyn kneels beside him, her hands hovering over his still form as if afraid to touch him. Maester Luwin pushes through the gathering crowd, his chain clinking as he drops to examine the boy. What happened? Ned demands, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. He fell from the broken tower, someone says. Must have been climbing again. Daenerys kneels beside Catelyn, her training in the healing arts taking over. She has spent countless hours with Maester Luwin, learning to tend wounds and set bones. Her hands move carefully over Bran's still form, checking for breaks, for signs of life. He's alive, she says, relief flooding her voice. Barely, but he's breathing. Luwin nods grimly. We need to move him inside, carefully. His back may be broken. As they prepare to carry Bran to his chamber, Daenerys catches sight of two figures standing apart from the crowd. Sir Jaime Lannister and Queen Cersei watch the proceedings with expressions that seem almost too composed for the tragedy unfolding before them. There is something in their eyes, a calculation that makes her skin crawl. She says nothing of her suspicions, but she files the observation away. In her experience, the most dangerous secrets are often hidden in plain sight. The next morning brings grim news. Bran remains unconscious, and Maester Luwin cannot say if he will ever wake. The fall has left him broken in ways that may never heal, and the castle settles into a mourning quiet that seems to seep into the very stones. It is then that Robert makes his request of Ned. They stand in the solar overlooking the Godswood, two old friends surrounded by the weight of years and duty. I need you in King's Landing, Ned, Robert says, his voice unusually serious. The realm needs you. Jon Arryn is dead, and I have no one else I can trust. Ned's refusal is immediate. My place is here, Robert. My family needs me, especially now with Bran. Your family will be safe. Bring them south if you like. The girls would benefit from time at court, and Bran will have the best masters in the realm tending to him. Robert's voice grows pleading. I'm drowning in King's Landing, Ned, surrounded by Lannisters and their creatures, by men who smile to my face while sharpening knives for my back. I need someone I can trust. From her position outside the solar door, where she has been sent to fetch Catelyn, Daenerys hears every word. The king's offer strikes fear into her heart. King's Landing is a den of lions, a place where Targaryens are hunted and secrets are currency. If Ned agrees to go south, if he takes the family with him, her careful disguise will crumble under the scrutiny of the capital. Yet she also hears something else in Robert's voice. Genuine fear, genuine need. The man who once fought dragons and won kingdoms is afraid of the very throne he claimed. There is a bitter irony in it that is not lost on her. "I'll consider it," Ned says finally, though his voice suggests he has already made his decision. That afternoon, as Catelyn maintains her vigil beside Bran's bed, Daenerys slips away to the crypts once more. The dragon eggs seem to call to her more urgently now, their warmth pulsing through the stone like a heartbeat. She lifts the black egg from its hiding place, cradling it against her chest. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispers to the ancient stone. "How can I protect my family when I'm the very thing that threatens them?" The egg offers no answers, but its warmth spreads through her body like liquid fire. For a moment, she imagines she can hear something stirring within the stone shell, something that recognizes the blood of dragons and responds to her need. Above her, the castle prepares for departure. Ned Stark will go south, whether he wishes to or not. The Game of Thrones calls to him, and duty demands he answer. But in the depths beneath Winterfell, ancient magic stirs in response to newer dangers. The dragon's blood runs true, and in the darkness, old powers begin to wake from their long slumber. The realm believes the dragons are dead, but they are wrong. The dragons are only sleeping, and their dreams are growing stronger with each passing day. Soon, very soon, the world will remember why the Targaryens were called the blood of the dragon, the Ihadra. But first, the young dragon must learn to fly, must learn to trust in the fire that burns within her veins. The Game of Thrones has begun again, and this time, the dragons will not remain hidden in the shadows. The dreams come to Daenerys every night now, vivid and burning with an intensity that leaves her gasping for breath when she wakes. Fire consumes her visions, great columns of flame that dance against a blood-red sky, and within those flames, shapes that might be dragons soar on wings of smoke and shadow. She hears voices speaking in High Valyrian, words she should not understand, yet somehow does, calling to her across the centuries. Each morning, she wakes with the taste of ash on her tongue and an overwhelming urge to descend into the crypts. The dragon eggs call to her more insistently now, their warmth seeping through the stone walls as if something within them grows stronger with each passing day. When she holds them, they pulse against her palms like living hearts, and she swears she can hear whispers emanating from deep within their fossilized shells. It has been 3 weeks since her father departed for King's Landing, 3 weeks since Winterfell began to feel like a ship without an anchor. Robb has taken on the responsibilities of lordship with admirable grace, but Daenerys can see the weight of it in his shoulders, the way his jaw sets when he thinks no one is watching. Bran remains unconscious in his chamber, tended day and night by his mother and Maester Luwin. The boy's breathing is steady, but he shows no signs of waking. His dire wolf, Summer, rarely leaves his bedside, as if the wolf knows something the humans do not. On this particular morning, as autumn mist clings to the walls of Winterfell, Daenerys makes her way to the crypts before dawn. The ironwood door yields to her touch, and she descends the familiar steps with a torch in hand. The dragon eggs wait for her in their hidden chamber, and today they feel different somehow, warmer, more alive. She lifts the cream-colored egg first, marveling at how its surface seems to shimmer in the torchlight. The scales carved into its shell appear to shift and move, as if the dragon within is pressing against its prison. When she cradles it against her chest, she feels a flutter of movement that makes her heart race. "What are you becoming?" she whispers to the ancient relic. The egg offers no answer, but the warmth spreads through her body like wine, filling her with a sensation she has never experienced before. Power, raw, primal power that recognizes the blood in her veins and responds to it. Meanwhile, in the solar above, a raven arrives, bearing news that will change everything. The bird's black wings are wet with rain, and the message tied to its leg bears the seal of King's Landing. Maester Luwin takes the scroll with trembling fingers, his face growing pale as he reads the words written there. "My lord," he says to Robb, who sits reviewing grain stores for the coming winter. "You must read this immediately." Robb takes the parchment, and Daenerys can hear his sharp intake of breath from the crypts below. The very stones seem to carry the weight of terrible news, and she finds herself climbing the steps 2 at a time, the dragon egg still clutched in her hands. She finds chaos in the great hall. Robb stands before the assembled household, the letter gripped in his white-knuckled fist, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. "My father has been taken prisoner by the Queen," he announces, his young voice carrying across the hall with surprising authority. "He stands accused of treason for questioning the legitimacy of her children." Gasps echo through the assembled lords and servants. Catelyn sits at the high table, her face pale as winter snow, while the younger Stark children cluster around her in confusion and fear. "What does this mean?" Sansa asks, her voice small and frightened. "It means we are at war," Robb replies grimly. "The Lannisters have made their choice, and we must make ours." Daenerys feels the dragon egg pulse against her chest, responding to the emotions flooding through her. Rage, grief, and something darker burn in her veins as she thinks of Ned Stark, the man who saved her life and raised her as his own daughter, now rotting in a Lannister dungeon. Over the following days, ravens fly from Winterfell like a storm of black wings. Robb calls his banners, summoning every sworn sword from White Harbour to the neck. The responses come swiftly. The Karstarks will march. The Umbers are already gathering their men, and even the mountain clans send word that they will answer the call. The dragon eggs grow warmer each day, their heat now noticeable even through the oiled leather wrappings. Daenerys finds herself spending more and more time in the crypts, drawn by instincts she cannot name. The dreams have grown so vivid that she sometimes struggles to distinguish between sleeping and waking, between memory and vision. In one particularly powerful dream, she stands atop a great pyramid, overlooking a city of red brick and golden domes. 3 dragons circle above her, their scales gleaming like jewels in the desert sun. She raises her arms, and they come to her call, landing with earth-shaking thuds that send tremors through the stone beneath her feet. "Dracarys!" she commands, and the world explodes in flame. She wakes to find scorch marks on the stone floor of the hidden chamber, though she has brought no flame down with her. The dragon eggs lie beside her, no longer merely warm but actually hot to the touch, their surfaces crackling with hairline fissures that seem to spread even as she watches. "Soon," she whispers, though she does not understand what she means. Above ground, preparations for war consume Winterfell. The smiths work day and night, forging swords and spearheads, while the stables echo with the sounds of horses being fitted for battle. Young men arrive daily from the surrounding lands, eager to follow the young wolf south, to free his father and claim vengeance on the Lannisters. Jon Snow finds Daenerys in the Godswood one evening, sitting beneath the heart tree with her back against its ancient trunk. The carved face seems to watch them both with its weeping red eyes, and the wind through the white branches sounds like whispered warnings. "You look troubled," Jon observes, settling beside her on the moss-covered ground. "Everything is falling apart," Daenerys replies. "Lord Stark taken prisoner, war coming to the north, Bran lying broken in his bed." She trails off, unwilling to voice her deepest fears about the changes she feels within herself. "Robb will bring father home," Jon says with quiet confidence. "The North remembers its own." Daenerys nods, though her thoughts are elsewhere. The dragon eggs call to her even now, their heat like a second heartbeat in her chest. She wonders what Jon would think if he knew what lay hidden beneath his feet, what ancient power stirs in response to the coming storm. "Will you march with him?" she asks. Jon's silence stretches long before he answers. "I had thought to take the black, to serve at the wall as my uncle Benjen does. But with everything that has happened," he shakes his head, "I cannot leave my family when they need me most." The next morning brings news that sends fresh ripples of alarm through Winterfell. Catelyn announces her intention to depart for the Riverlands, to treat with her father and secure the support of the River Lords for Robb's cause. "I will not sit idle while my husband rots in a Lannister cell," she declares to the assembled war council. "Lord Hoster still commands respect among the River Lords, and they will listen to his daughter." Robb protests, unwilling to lose another parent to the dangerous Game of Thrones, but Catelyn's mind is made up. She will ride south with a small escort, trusting to speed and stealth to see her safely to River Run. As preparations begin for her departure, Daenerys slips away to the crypts one final time before her world changes forever. The dragon eggs are so hot now that she must wrap her hands in thick cloth to handle them. Cracks spread across their surfaces like spider webs, and through the gaps she catches glimpses of something moving within. She lifts the black egg with red swirls, cradling it against her chest despite the heat. For a moment, she feels completely connected to whatever sleeps inside, as if her heartbeat and its pulse are one and the same. "I don't know what you are becoming," she whispers to the ancient relic, "but I know you will be magnificent." The egg shudders against her chest, and for just an instant, she hears something that might be the cry of a newborn dragon echoing from deep within the stone. The sound fills her with such longing that tears spring to her eyes. Above her, Winterfell prepares for war and separation. Below her, in the ancient darkness where dead kings sleep, the age of dragons prepares to dawn once more. The blood of old Valyria runs in her veins, and the fire that destroyed an empire burns in her dreams. Soon, very soon, the world will burn, and from those ashes, something new will rise. The dragons are coming home, and when they do, nothing will ever be the same. The morning mist clings to the battlements of Winterfell as Robb Stark leads his army south through the Hunter's Gate. 3,000 men follow the young wolf's banner, their steel glinting in the pale sunlight as they march toward war. Daenerys watches from the walls as her adoptive brother rides at the head of the column, Grey Wind loping beside his horse with deadly grace. Jon Snow stands beside her on the ramparts, his dark eyes reflecting the same mixture of pride and worry that fills her own heart. Below them, the last of the supply wagons disappear into the Wolfswood, leaving Winterfell feeling suddenly empty and vulnerable. "He looks like his father," Jon observes quietly. "He is his father," Daenerys replies, "in all the ways that matter." The responsibility now falls to them, Jon Snow, the bastard, and Daenerys Stone, the hidden dragon. Together, they must protect what remains of House Stark, while the realm tears itself apart. The irony is not lost on her, that two of the most dangerous secrets in Westeros now stand guard over the ancient seat of the Kings of Winter. Theon Greyjoy joins them on the walls, his sea-green cloak snapping in the wind. The heir to the Iron Islands has served as Robb's closest friend and companion for years, yet Daenerys has always sensed something restless in him, something that yearns for recognition and glory. "A fine sight," Theon says, watching the army disappear into the trees. "Though I still say we're wasting our greatest advantage." Jon turns to him with a frown. "What do you mean?" Theon's eyes find Daenerys, and she feels her blood turn to ice. "Our ward here carries a name that could rally half the realm to our cause. There are lords in the south who still remember the Dragon Kings with fondness, who chafe under Lannister rule." "Theon," Jon warns, his voice low and dangerous. "What? It's true, isn't it?" Theon presses on, either oblivious to the tension or choosing to ignore it. "Daenerys Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Imagine the chaos we could sow in King's Landing if word spread that the Dragon Princess lives." Daenerys grips the stone parapet until her knuckles turn white. After years of careful concealment, years of being no one special, the truth feels like a blade pressed against her throat. "I am Daenerys Stone," she says firmly. "Nothing more." Theon laughs, but there is no humor in it. and I am the heir to a handful of rocks in the sea. We are what we are, not what we pretend to be." His expression grows serious. The realm needs to know that House Targaryen endures. The Lannisters have ruled through fear and gold for too long. Jon's hand moves to his sword hilt. "Drop this talk, Theon. Now. Or what? You'll run me through with that bastard blade of yours?" Theon's voice carries a bitter edge. "We're fighting a war, Jon. Wars are won with every advantage you can muster." Before the confrontation can escalate further, Maester Luwin appears at the top of the stairs, his grey robes fluttering around his thin frame. His face bears the grave expression of a man carrying troubling news. "My lords, my lady," he says formally, "we have received word from Castle Black. Wildling raids have increased dramatically along the wall. Lord Commander Mormont requests additional men if we can spare them." Jon straightens, his attention shifting from Theon to more immediate concerns. "What kind of raids?" "The usual sort at first. Cattle theft, burned homesteads. But the reports grow stranger with each raven." Luwin pauses, choosing his words carefully. "The Watch speaks of wildlings fleeing south in great numbers, not to raid but to escape something. They tell tales of creatures in the deep woods, things that should not exist." Daenerys feels a chill that has nothing to do with the northern wind. Something stirs in her memory, fragments of dreams filled with ice and shadow, with blue eyes that burn like winter stars. "How many men can we spare?" Jon asks. "Perhaps 100, Luwin replies. "Sir Roderick can lead them north, while you maintain the defense of Winterfell." As the men discuss logistics and deployments, Daenerys slips away from the walls. The conversation with Theon has left her shaken, and the news from the wall fills her with an unnameable dread. She needs the familiar comfort of the crypts, needs to be near the dragon eggs that have become her only source of certainty in an uncertain world. The ironwood door opens at her touch, and she descends into the familiar darkness with a torch in hand. The dragon eggs wait for her in their hidden chamber, but today they feel different. The heat radiating from them is so intense that the air itself shimmers, and the cracks in their surfaces have spread like spider webs across the ancient stone. She kneels beside them, reaching out tentatively to touch the green egg. The moment her fingers make contact, the world explodes into vision. She stands atop the wall itself, its ice-covered ramparts stretching endlessly in both directions. Beyond the barrier, a vast army of the dead marches south, their blue eyes burning like cold fire in the eternal night. At their head rides a figure in armor of ice and shadow, death incarnate upon a pale horse. The vision shifts, and she sees King's Landing burning, its towers falling like broken teeth. Then Winterfell, its ancient stones shattered and bloodied. Finally, she sees herself, standing in a field of ash and bone with 3 dragons circling overhead, their roars echoing across a dead world. She jerks her hand back with a gasp, and the vision fades. But the dragon eggs continue to pulse with heat, and through the growing cracks she glimpses something moving within. Something alive. "Dracarys," she whispers, the High Valyrian word flowing from her lips like a prayer. The black egg with red swirls responds to her voice, a hairline fracture splitting its surface from top to bottom. Through the gap, she sees a flash of scales that gleam like dark jewels, and for just an instant, a tiny eye opens to stare at her with ancient wisdom. That night, as Winterfell settles into an uneasy quiet, Daenerys finds Jon in the Godswood once again. The heart tree looms above them, its carved face weeping red tears in the moonlight. Jon sits with his back against the white bark, sharpening his sword with slow, methodical strokes. "You look troubled," he says without looking up. "We all have secrets, Jon," she begins carefully, some heavier than others. "Aye." His voice carries no judgment, only understanding. The North is built on secrets, old ones mostly, buried deep where they can't hurt anyone. She sits beside him on the moss-covered ground, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cold night air. What if I told you that some secrets are too dangerous to keep buried, that they have a way of clawing their way back to the surface? Jon stops sharpening his blade and looks at her directly. In the moonlight, his dark eyes seem to hold depths she has never noticed before. I would say that the North has weathered many storms, that the people here know how to keep faith with those who keep faith with them. He pauses, his voice growing softer. I would say that whatever burden you carry, you don't have to carry it alone. The words hang between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Daenerys feels the weight of 14 years of lies pressing down on her shoulders, the constant fear of discovery, the loneliness of being the last dragon in a world that wants all dragons dead. My name is not Daenerys Stone, she whispers. Jon nods slowly, as if he has suspected this for some time. What is it then? Daenerys Targaryen, daughter of Aerys the Mad King, sister to Rhaegar, who died on the Trident. The words tumble out of her in a rush, 14 years of silence finally broken. I'm the dragon's daughter, Jon, the last of my line. For a long moment, Jon says nothing. The wind rustles through the white branches above them, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. When he finally speaks, his voice is steady and sure. You are Daenerys of Winterfell, he says firmly. You are my sister in all the ways that matter. The rest is just blood and history. Tears spring to her eyes at his words. You don't understand. If Robert knew, if anyone knew. Robert Baratheon is a fool drunk on old grievances, Jon interrupts. You are not your father, just as I am not mine. We are who we choose to be. He sheathes his sword and turns to face her fully. But there's more, isn't there? Something you haven't told me. Daenerys nods, thinking of the dragon eggs hidden beneath their feet, of the visions that grow stronger each day, of the ancient power stirring in her blood. There are dragon eggs in the crypts, she says simply, 3 of them, and they're beginning to hatch. Jon's eyes widen, but he does not pull away. Dragons, real dragons, real as winter, real as the blood in my veins. She meets his gaze steadily. The age of dragons isn't over, Jon. It's about to begin again. Above them, the stars wheel in their ancient patterns, and deep beneath Winterfell, 3 dragon eggs pulse with the rhythm of awakening hearts. The realm stands on the edge of war, with ice and fire gathering their strength for the battles to come. Soon, very soon, the world will learn that House Targaryen has returned. But first, the dragons must be born, and their mother must learn to embrace the fire that runs in her veins. The Game of Thrones has many players, but only the dragons can burn the board clean and start anew. The attack comes at dawn, when the mist still clings to the walls of Winterfell like grasping fingers. Horns sound from the watchtowers as riders emerge from the Wolfswood, their black sails and kraken banners stark against the grey morning light. Ironborn reavers, 30 strong, with steel in their hands and murder in their hearts. Jon Snow races up the steps to the battlements, his sword already drawn. Beside him, Theon Greyjoy curses his own kinsman with words that would make a Septon weep. The irony is bitter. The heir to the Iron Islands defending Stark lands against his father's raiders. How many? Jon demands of the watchman. 3 dozen, maybe more. They've got grappling hooks and fire arrows. The man's voice shakes as he points toward the tree line. Look there, they're trying to scale the walls. Below in the courtyard, chaos erupts as the castle's defenders scramble to meet the threat. Sir Roderick had departed 2 days prior with most of the fighting men, leaving Winterfell with barely 50 swords to hold the ancient fortress. The odds are grim, but not impossible. What makes Jon's blood run cold is the realization that this is no random raid. The Ironborn have come prepared for a siege, which means they know Winterfell's defenses are weakened. Someone has told them that the young wolf has marched south with his army. "They know we're vulnerable," Theon snarls, echoing Jon's thoughts. "This isn't chance. Someone told them to come now." Jon nods grimly. "Can you hold the east wall?" "Aye. But Jon, these are my father's men. If they take the castle—" Theon's voice trails off, but the implication hangs heavy in the air. Balon Greyjoy's son cannot be seen fighting too hard against Balon Greyjoy's raiders. "Just hold the wall," Jon says simply. "I'll handle the rest." Meanwhile, deep in the castle's heart, Daenerys wakes to the sound of battle cries and clashing steel. The dragon eggs beside her bed pulse with heat that makes the air shimmer, their cracks spreading like veins of fire across the ancient stone. She has taken to keeping them in her chamber, unable to bear separation from the life stirring within. She dresses quickly, her hands shaking as she hears the sounds of fighting grow closer. Through her window, she can see smoke rising from the stables, and the orange glow of fire reflects off the morning mist. Winterfell is under attack, and she is powerless to help. Or is she? The dragon eggs call to her with an urgency she has never felt before. The heat radiating from them is so intense that touching them should burn her flesh, yet her hands remain unharmed. The blood of the dragon runs true in her veins, and fire cannot harm the dragon's daughter. She gathers the 3 eggs in her arms, their weight familiar after months of secret communion. They pulse against her chest like living hearts, and through the spreading cracks she can see movement, scales that gleam like jewels, eyes that burn with ancient fire. The crypts. She must take them to the crypts, to the chamber where they have waited for centuries. Something deep in her bones tells her that this is the moment, that danger has awakened what slept within the stone shells. She slips from her chamber and descends through the castle's winding passages. The sounds of battle fade behind her as she makes her way to the ironwood door that guards the entrance to the realm of the dead. The door swings open at her touch, and she plunges into the familiar darkness. The dragon eggs grow hotter with each step she takes into the depths. By the time she reaches the hidden chamber where the ancient dragon skulls wait, they are blazing like forge coals in her arms. Yet still her flesh remains unburned, protected by the magic that flows in her blood. She kneels in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the stone effigies of dead Stark kings. Their granite eyes seem to watch her as she places the 3 eggs on the floor before her. The air itself begins to shimmer with heat, and the very stones seem to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Blood of my blood," she whispers in High Valyrian, words that come to her from some deep memory. "Fire of my fire, wake and know your mother." The black egg with red swirls is the first to crack open completely. The sound is like breaking thunder, and from within emerges something that takes her breath away. A dragon, small enough to fit in her cupped hands, yet perfect in every detail. His scales are black as midnight with veins of deep red, and his eyes burn like molten gold. "Drogon," she breathes, and the tiny dragon turns toward her voice with recognition. The green egg follows, splitting apart like a blooming flower. From its depths comes a dragon with scales of jade and bronze, his neck frilled with spines that catch the torchlight. This one she names Rhaegal, for the brother she never knew, and he too fixes her with eyes full of ancient wisdom. Finally, the cream-colored egg cracks open with a sound like singing crystal. The dragon that emerges is pale as winter morning, with scales that shimmer between white and gold. Viserion, she calls him, and he spreads wings no larger than a bat's, yet perfect in their proportions. The 3 dragons regard her with eyes that have never seen the world, yet somehow know her completely. They are her children, born not of flesh but of fire and will, bound to her by bonds stronger than blood. Around them, the ancient chamber fills with light that has no source, and the temperature rises until the very air burns. The stone dragons carved on the walls seem to stir, as if awakening from their long slumber. Magic, old and deep as the foundations of the world, pulses through the crypts of Winterfell. Above ground, the battle rages with desperate intensity. Jon Snow stands atop the battlements, his sword red with iron-born blood. But more raiders pour from the forest with each passing moment. The castle's defences are holding, but barely. That is when the tremor shakes Winterfell to its very foundations. It begins as a vibration deep in the earth, as if the castle's ancient stones are singing in harmony. Then the shaking grows stronger, rattling windows and sending servants stumbling in the corridors above. In the crypts, the temperature spikes so high that the very air seems to catch fire. Jon feels the tremor beneath his feet and knows, somehow, that it has nothing to do with the battle raging around him. This is something else, something that touches his soul with recognition, even though his mind cannot grasp its meaning. "What in the seven hells was that?" Theon shouts from across the courtyard. Before Jon can answer, a sound emerges from deep within the castle that makes every man on the walls stop fighting and stare. It is a roar, but unlike any sound that has ever been heard in the north. It is the cry of something ancient and terrible and magnificent, something that died out of the world more than a century ago. The cry of a dragon. In the hidden chamber beneath Winterfell, Daenerys rises to her feet with 3 dragons perched on her shoulders and arms. They are small still, no bigger than cats, but they carry themselves with the majesty of creatures that will one day blot out the sun with their wings. The heat they generate turns the air around them into shimmering waves, and where their claws touch the ancient stones, small scorch marks appear. They are fire made flesh, magic given form, and they know her as their mother in ways deeper than understanding. "We are the blood of old Valyria," she tells them, and her voice echoes strangely in the superheated air. "We are the last, and we are the first. Together, we will take back what was stolen from us." The dragons chirp in response, their voices already carrying hints of the roars they will one day unleash upon the world. Above them, the battle continues, but its outcome has already been decided. The dragons have returned to the world, and with them comes fire and blood, and the promise of conquest. The age of kings is ending, and the age of dragons has begun anew. In the depths of Winterfell's crypts, surrounded by the bones of ancient kings, a young woman who is not quite a woman anymore stands with 3 newborn dragons and dreams of burning cities and toppling thrones. The game has changed, the players have changed, and soon, very soon, the world will learn what it means to face the fury of the dragon's daughter. The ironwood door of the crypts swings open with a thunderous crash, and Daenerys Targaryen emerges into the courtyard of Winterfell like a figure from legend. 3 dragons perch on her shoulders and arms, their scales gleaming in the morning light, their eyes burning with the fire of old Valyria. Though they are small as cats, no larger than ravens, their presence transforms the very air around them. The battle in the courtyard freezes as every man, stark loyalist and ironborn raider alike, turns to stare at the impossible sight. The dragons chirp and hiss, their tiny voices already carrying hints of the roars that will one day shake mountains. Wisps of smoke curl from their nostrils, and where their claws grip Daenerys's clothing, small scorch marks appear. Jon Snow stands atop the battlements, his sword forgotten in his hand, his dark eyes wide with wonder and terror. Below him, a dozen ironborn raiders have breached the main gate and fight desperately against the castle's few remaining defenders. But now they too have stopped to gape at the young woman who walks among them, with fire-made flesh riding upon her shoulders. "7 hells," Theon breathes from across the courtyard. She actually did it. One of the ironborn, a grizzled reaver with salt and blood caked in his beard, raises his axe toward Daenerys. "Dragon witch, you'll burn for your sorcery." Drogon, the black dragon with red markings, turns his golden eyes toward the threat. His small head tilts, and his mouth opens wide. What emerges is not the chirp of a hatchling, but a tongue of flame that burns white-hot despite coming from such a tiny source. The Ironborn screams as the dragonfire washes over him. His leather armor blackens and curls, his weapon falls from nerveless fingers, and he stumbles backward into his fellows. The flame lasts only an instant, but it leaves no doubt about what these small creatures are capable of. "I am Daenerys, Stormborn of House Targaryen," she declares, her voice carrying across the courtyard with newfound authority. "I'm the blood of the dragon, and these are my children. Harm them and burn." The remaining Ironborn break and run. These are hard men, reavers who have faced steel and storm without flinching, but facing dragonfire is something else entirely. They flee toward their ships like rabbits before a forest fire, abandoning their dead and wounded in their haste to escape. Jon leaps down from the battlements and runs across the courtyard, his boots splashing through pools of blood and scattered weapons. When he reaches Daenerys, he stops just beyond arm's length, his eyes fixed on the dragons that regard him with ancient intelligence. "They're real," he says, his voice filled with awe. "They're actually real." "Real as winter," Daenerys replies, echoing their conversation from the Godswood. "Real as the blood in my veins." Rhaegal, the green dragon, spreads his tiny wings and launches himself from her shoulder. He glides across the space between them and lands on Jon's outstretched hand, his claws gripping carefully to avoid drawing blood. Jon freezes, barely daring to breathe as the dragon studies his face with eyes like molten emeralds. "He likes you," Daenerys observes with a small smile. Dragons are excellent judges of character. Around them, the courtyard slowly comes back to life as servants and guards emerge from their hiding places. They approach cautiously, their eyes fixed on the impossible creatures that have appeared in their midst. Some kneel, recognizing the return of House Targaryen. Others simply stare in wonder at the first dragons born in over a century. Maester Luwin appears at the castle's main door, his grey robes rustling as he hurries towards them. His lined face shows a mixture of scholarly excitement and deep concern as he takes in the sight of the three hatchlings. "My lady," he says carefully, "we must speak. Immediately." Within the hour, they gather in Luwin's chambers. The Maester's study is cramped and cluttered with scrolls and books, but he has cleared space on his writing desk for the three dragons to perch. Drogon coils around a brass candlestick like a serpent, while Viserion and Rhaegal explore the collection of quills and ink bottles with curious chirps. "I had hoped this day would never come," Luwin says, settling into his chair with a heavy sigh. "Yet I confess, there is wonder in it as well." He pulls an ancient tome from his shelves, its leather binding cracked with age. The title is written in High Valyrian, but Daenerys can read it now. The letters seem to rearrange themselves before her eyes into words she understands. "Dragons of the Freehold, their care and keeping," Luwin translates, written by Maester Tomax, who served the Targaryens during the reign of King Jaehaerys. "I have been saving it for this moment." "You knew this would happen?" Jon asks. "I suspected it might. The eggs have been growing warmer for months, responding to her presence. Ancient magic does not sleep forever, especially when the blood that awakened it runs true." Luwin opens the book to a page covered with detailed drawings of dragon anatomy. "They will grow quickly now. A dragon that hatches the size of a cat may be large enough to ride within a year." Daenerys feels her pulse quicken at the words. To ride a dragon, to soar above the clouds and see the world spread out below like a map. It is a dream she has carried since childhood without understanding why. "What do they eat?" she asks practically. "Meat, preferably fresh. Fish when they are young, larger prey as they grow. They will hunt for themselves soon enough, but for now they depend on you entirely." Luwin turned several pages, pointing to illustrations of dragon behavior. "The bond between dragon and rider is sacred, unbreakable. They will know your moods, your desires, sometimes even your thoughts." As if to demonstrate his point, Viserion chirps and glides from the desk to Daenerys' shoulder, nuzzling against her neck with surprising gentleness. His scales are warm to the touch, and she can feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat where he presses against her. "We need to send word to Robb," Jon says quietly. "He needs to know what has happened here." Luwin nods grimly. "Aye, and to Lady Catelyn as well. The return of dragons changes everything. There will be those who see it as a sign, a portent of great change coming to the realm. Or as a threat to be eliminated," Daenerys adds darkly. "Robert Baratheon has built his rule on the extinction of House Targaryen. He will not suffer dragons to live, no matter how small they are now." The room falls silent as the implications sink in. The secret that has protected Daenerys for 14 years is now impossible to hide. Dragons cannot be disguised or explained away. Their very existence proclaims the return of the blood of old Valyria. "Then we must be ready," Jon says finally. "If war comes to Winterfell again, we will meet it with fire and blood." Over the following days, ravens fly from Winterfell's tower like storm clouds. Messages wing their way south to find Robb's army, east to reach Catelyn in the Riverlands, and to every corner of the north where Stark banners still fly. The news they carry will shake the Seven Kingdoms to their foundations. The dragons grow visibly stronger each day. Their appetite is voracious, and the castle's kitchens work overtime to keep them fed with fresh meat and fish. Drogon shows a preference for beef, tearing into chunks of meat with savage enthusiasm. Rhaegal favors fish from the castle's ponds, while Viserion seems content with whatever is offered. More importantly, they begin to show their distinct personalities. Drogon is the most aggressive, quick to anger, and swift to flame. He perches on Daenerys' shoulder like a fierce guardian, his golden eyes constantly scanning for threats. Rhaegal is more contemplative, often coiling around her arm while she reads or studies. Viserion is the most curious, always exploring new spaces and investigating anything that catches his attention. Word begins to spread beyond Winterfell, despite efforts at secrecy. Merchants and travelers carry tales of dragons in the north, and each telling grows in the retelling. Some claim the dragons are already the size of horses, breathing fire that can melt stone. Others insist they saw 100 dragons circling Winterfell's towers. "Let them talk," Daenerys tells Jon one evening as they sit in the Godswood. All 3 dragons perch in the branches of the heart tree, their eyes reflecting the light of their torch like stars. Fear is a weapon like any other. Better our enemies imagine us stronger than we are. Jon nods, but his expression remains troubled. "I keep thinking about what you said, about Robert Baratheon. If he marches north with the full strength of the realm, then we will face him," Daenerys replies with quiet confidence. "The dragons are small now, but they are growing, and I am not the frightened girl who hid in these halls anymore." Above them, Drogon spreads his wings, already twice the size they were at hatching, and releases a small jet of flame that illuminates the carved face of the weirwood. The ancient wood does not burn, but the fire reflects in the tree's red eyes like a promise. The dragon has awakened in Winterfell, and the realm will never be the same. In the crypts below, ancient kings rest easier, knowing that fire has returned to defend their halls. In the south, armies mass and conspiracies brew as word spreads of the impossible. But here in the Godswood, beneath the watching eyes of the old gods and the new, a young woman sits with 3 dragons and dreams of the sky. The Game of Thrones has begun in earnest, and for the first time in over a century, the players must account for the fury of dragons. The raven arrives at Harrenhal in the grey hour before dawn, its black wings heavy with rain and ill news. Tywin Lannister stands in the burned hall that once housed the greatest castle in Westeros, studying maps by candlelight while his army sleeps. When Maester Qyburn brings him the message, the old lion's face shows no emotion, but his green eyes glitter with dangerous intelligence. "Dragons," Tywin says quietly, rolling the parchment between his fingers. At Winterfell. Small ones, newly hatched, but dragons nonetheless. Qyburn shifts nervously, his chains clinking in the silence. The report comes from 3 separate sources, my lord. Merchants, a wandering septon, and one of our own agents in White Harbour. All tell the same tale. A Targaryen girl, hidden among the Starks since the rebellion. 14 years of lies, and now the truth hatches with dragonfire. Tywin moves to the great window overlooking the God's Eye. In the distance, lightning flickers across the water like dragon breath. Ned Stark always was too honourable for his own good. What are your orders, my lord? Tywin is quiet for a long moment, his mind racing through possibilities and contingencies. The Game of Thrones has just grown infinitely more complex. 3 dragons, however small, change everything. They are symbols of legitimacy, weapons of war, and most importantly, proof that House Targaryen endures. Double the bounty on the Stark girl, he says finally, and send ravens to our allies in the north. If the dragons can be captured alive, they represent more value than all the gold in Casterly Rock. If they cannot be taken, he pauses, his voice growing cold. Then they must be destroyed before they grow large enough to matter. Meanwhile, on the wind-swept island of Dragonstone, another king receives word of the dragon's return, with very different emotions. Stannis Baratheon stands in the chamber of the painted table, studying the carved map of Westeros that dominates the room. When the Maester finishes reading the report, Stannis's jaw works silently for several moments. Dragons, he says, his voice carrying neither joy nor fear, only grim acceptance. The wheel turns, and the Targaryens return to complicate my claim. Sir Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight, shifts uncomfortably beside his king. Your Grace, surely this changes nothing. You are the rightful king, Robert's brother and heir. Am I? Stannis turns from the table, his blue eyes hard as winter steel. If Daenerys Targaryen lives, if she commands dragons, then her claim supersedes mine. The Targaryens ruled by right of conquest for 3 centuries, a stronger claim than mine, which rests only on Robert's usurpation. But she is a woman, a girl, really. Surely, a girl with dragons, Stannis interrupts, which makes her more dangerous than any man with 1,000 swords. He moves back to the painted table, placing his finger on the carved representation of Winterfell. The realm will follow strength, Davos. They always have. And dragons represent a strength this world has not seen for over a century. The Red Priestess Melisandre glides from the shadows like living flame, her ruby glowing at her throat. Perhaps this is Rhalla's will, Your Grace. Fire made flesh returned to the world in the hour of greatest need. Perhaps, Stannis replies coldly. Or perhaps it is simply another complication in an already bloody war. At Winterfell, the dragons grow with startling speed. In just a fortnight since their hatching, Drogon has reached the size of a small dog, his wingspan now broad enough to carry him across the courtyard in gliding flight. Rhaegal and Viserion are not far behind, their appetites voracious, and their intelligence clearly developing beyond that of mere beasts. Daenerys spends her days learning to communicate with them, discovering that they respond as much to her emotions as to her words. When she feels anger, their eyes flare with inner fire. When she feels contentment, they curl around her like cats, seeking warmth. The bond between them deepens with each passing hour. They understand you, Jon observes, watching as all 3 dragons perch on various parts of her body while she reads in the Godswood. It's like they can read your thoughts. Sometimes I think they can, Daenerys replies, stroking Viserion's pale scales. The books say the bond between dragon and rider goes deeper than training, deeper than words. It's blood magic, older than the conquest. Drogon spreads his wings and launches himself into the air, circling the heart tree before landing on Jon's shoulder. The black dragon studies the young man's face with golden eyes that seem far too ancient for such a small creature. He likes you, Daenerys says with a smile. All of them do. I think they know your family. Jon reaches up carefully to touch Drogon's neck, marveling at the heat radiating from the dragon's scales. Family. I never thought I'd have dragons for family. We are more than family, Daenerys says, her voice growing serious. We are the last. When these dragons are grown, when they can carry riders and breathe fire that can melt castle walls, we will be the most powerful force in Westeros. The weight of that responsibility hangs heavy between them. Power brings choices, and choices bring consequences. They both know that the decisions they make in the coming months will echo through history. A raven arrives that afternoon, bearing Robb's seal, and its message brings new complications to an already complex situation. Jon finds Daenerys in Maester Luwin's chambers, where she has been studying texts about dragon training and care. Robb wants us to bring the dragons south, Jon says without preamble. He thinks they could end the war quickly, save thousands of lives. Daenerys looks up from her book, where she has been reading about the bond between Queen Alysanne and her dragon Silverwing. And what do you think? I think Robb sees them as weapons when they're barely more than hatchlings. They need time to grow, to learn. Rushing them into battle could get them killed. Or get us killed, Daenerys adds grimly. The dragons are strong, but they're not invincible. A well-placed crossbow bolt, a scorpion engine, even a lucky sword thrust could end everything we've worked to build. Luwin looks up from his own reading, his face troubled. There is wisdom in caution, my lady. The histories tell us that even full-grown dragons can be killed by determined men with the right weapons. Young dragons are vulnerable in ways their older kin are not. The debate continues through the evening, but before any decision can be reached, another raven arrives. This one bears the royal seal of King Joffrey Baratheon, though the wax is cracked and the letter shows signs of having been copied by multiple hands. The message is brief, but chilling. By royal decree, the creatures called dragons dwelling at Winterfell are commanded to be brought to King's Landing immediately, there to serve as curiosities in the royal menagerie. Any who harbours these beasts against the crown's will shall be deemed traitors and enemies of the realm. Jon crumples the parchment in his fist, his face dark with anger. Curiosities, he wants to put them in cages like exotic birds. He wants to control them, Daenerys corrects, her own voice hard as steel, or failing that, to ensure no one else can use them against him. The implications are clear to everyone in the room. Joffrey's demand is not a request, but an ultimatum. Comply, and watch the dragons be neutered as symbols of royal power. Refuse, and face the combined might of the Iron Throne and its allies. What do we tell him? Jon asks. Daenerys stands and moves to the window, where she can see her dragons playing in the courtyard below. Drogon chases a leather ball, while his brothers dart through the air above him, their wings growing stronger with each passing day. We tell him nothing, she says finally. Kings who issue commands to dragons often find themselves burned for their presumption. Outside, storm clouds gather over Winterfell as word spreads of the royal decree. In the south, armies prepare for battles that may determine the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. But in the ancient seat of the Starks, a young woman stands with 3 growing dragons and refuses to bow to a boy who styles himself king. The realm holds its breath, waiting to see whether fire or steel will triumph in the war that is coming. But those who know dragons understand that fire always finds a way to burn brightest when the stakes are highest. The Game of Thrones has grown deadly serious, and the players must now account for creatures that can reduce castles to ash and armies to cinders. The age of dragons is dawning once more, and with it comes the promise of conquest or the threat of destruction. In Winterfell's crypts, ancient kings stir in their stone tombs, sensing that their descendant walks above with fire incarnate at her command. The North remembers, and what it remembers most of all is that winter is coming, but this time it brings dragons in its wake. The raven from Castle Black arrives on wings black as midnight, bearing news that chills the blood of every man who hears it. Maester Luwin reads the message aloud in the great hall, his voice growing more strained with each word. Dead things walk beyond the wall. The Night's Watch has lost contact with 3 ranging parties in the past fortnight. Wildlings flee south in vast numbers, speaking of blue-eyed shadows that kill without mercy. Lord Commander Mormont fears the ancient enemy has awakened. Jon Snow stands before the assembled household, his face grave as Winterstone. In the month since the dragons hatched, he has grown into the role of defender, his natural leadership blossoming under the weight of responsibility. Behind him, Daenerys listens with her dragons perched on the back of her chair, Drogon now large enough to rest his head on her shoulder, while Rhaegal and Viserion have grown to the size of hunting hounds. "How many men does Mormont send?" Jon asks. 50 rangers, led by Sir Malador Locke. They should arrive within the week. Luwin sets down the letter, his lined face troubled. "But Jon, if the others truly have returned, then Winterfell becomes the last line of defense for the north," Jon finishes grimly. "We hold here, or everything south of the wall falls to the darkness." Theon Greyjoy shifts nervously by the fire. "You speak as if these others are real. Dead men walking? It sounds like children's tales meant to frighten babes." Drogon turns his golden eyes toward Theon and releases a small snort of flame. The message is clear. If dragons can be real, so can walking dead. "The first men built the wall for a reason," Daenerys says, quietly. 8,000 years ago, they faced something so terrible that they raised a barrier of ice 700 feet high to keep it out. Whatever they feared, it was real enough to unite every tribe and clan in the north. 3 days later, the Night's Watch reinforcements arrive at Winterfell's gates. 50 men in black cloaks, their faces weathered by years beyond the wall, led by Sir Malador Locke, a grizzled veteran with scars that speak of countless fights against wildlings and worse. Jon greets them in the courtyard, and Locke clasps his forearm in the manner of sworn brothers. "You look more like your uncle every day," Locke observes. "Benjen would be proud to see you now." "What news of my uncle?" Jon asks hopefully. Locke's expression darkens. "Lost on a ranging 6 months past. We found his horse, but—" He shakes his head. "The others take no prisoners, Jon Snow. Remember that in the battles to come. The Rangers bring with them weapons of dragon glass and iron, maps of the lands beyond the wall, and tales that make even seasoned warriors uneasy. They speak of abandoned wildling villages, of corpses that rise and fight with unnatural strength, of a creeping cold that kills everything it touches. They're organizing," Locke explains to Jon and Daenerys in the castle's war room. "This isn't random slaughter. The dead move in formation, use strategy. Something commands them, something with intelligence and purpose." Daenerys studies the map of the north, her dragons coiled around her like living jewelry. "How long before they reach the wall?" "They're already at the wall. The question is how long before they breach it." Locke points to several marked positions. "The Watch has lost 3 castles already. Only Castle Black, Eastwatch, and the Shadow Tower still hold. And even there, the men speak of strange lights and voices in the darkness." That night, as if summoned by their fears, the attack comes. Horns sound from the walls as shapes emerge from the wolfswood, wildlings in furs and iron, screaming their war cries as they charge toward Winterfell. But these are not random raiders. They move with purpose, scaling the walls with grappling hooks, while archers loose flights of arrows at the defenders. Jon races to the battlements, his sword singing as he draws it. Below in the courtyard, he can see the real threat, iron-born warriors emerging from hidden boats along the White Knife, their axes gleaming in the moonlight. This is a coordinated assault, planned and executed with military precision. "They mean to take the castle," Theon shouts over the din of battle. "The wildlings are a distraction. The real attack comes from the river." Jon nods grimly and turns to find Daenerys already beside him, her dragons spread across her shoulders and arms like living armor. Drogon has grown to the size of a wolf, his wingspan now broad enough to carry him across the courtyard in sustained flight. "Can you help?" Jon asks. "Fire and blood," she replies simply, and her dragons take wing. What follows is unlike any battle the North has ever seen. Drogon soars over the wildling advance, breathing gouts of flame that send fur-clad warriors scrambling for cover. His fire, though still small compared to the great dragons of legend, burns hot enough to ignite arrows in mid-flight and set wooden shields ablaze. Rhaegal and Viserion dive at the Ironborn climbing the walls, their claws raking across iron mail and leaving bloody furrows. They are too small yet to carry riders, but they fight with intelligence and coordination that speaks to their growing bond with Daenerys. "Watch the flanks!" Jon shouts to the defenders, his own sword cutting down a wildling who has made it over the walls. "They're trying to open the gates!" The battle rages for an hour, steel ringing against steel, while dragonfire illuminates the chaos below. Jon finds himself fighting beside rangers of the Night's Watch, their black cloaks stark against the flames. These men have faced the darkness beyond the wall, and they fight with the grim determination of those who know what failure means. But it is Daenerys who turns the tide. Standing atop the gatehouse with all 3 dragons circling above her, she raises her voice in high Valyrian, her words carrying across the battlefield like thunder. "Dracarys," she commands, and her children respond as one. 3 streams of dragonfire converge on the Ironborn, attempting to breach the main gate. Their screams echo across the courtyard as their armor melts and their weapons turn red-hot in their hands. The sight breaks the remaining attackers' will, and they flee back toward their ships like rabbits before a forest fire. In the aftermath, as the wounded are tended and the dead are counted, Jon finds Daenerys sitting alone in the Godswood. Her dragons perch in the heart tree above her, their eyes reflecting the light of the stars. She looks exhausted, drained by the effort of commanding them in their first real battle. "You saved us," Jon says, settling beside her on the moss-covered ground. "We saved us," she corrects. "You held the walls. I just provided the fire." They sit in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared danger creating an intimacy that words could not. Jon studies her profile in the starlight, the strong line of her jaw, the silver hair that catches moonbeams like spun silk, the violet eyes that seem to hold depths no 14-year-old should possess. "I've never seen anything like it," he says finally. "The way they obeyed you, the way they fought together. It was like watching magic come to life." "It is magic," Daenerys replies softly. "The magic of old Valyria, of the dragon lords who ruled the world for centuries. I feel it growing stronger in me every day, changing me into something I don't yet understand." Jon reaches out instinctively, his hand covering hers where it rests on the ground between them. Her skin is warm, almost fevered, as if the dragonfire burns in her veins. "You're not changing," he says with quiet conviction. "You're becoming who you were always meant to be." She turns to look at him then, and something passes between them, an understanding that goes beyond words, beyond the careful barriers they have built around themselves. For a moment, they are not the bastard and the hidden dragon, not the defender and the weapon. They are simply Jon and Daenerys, 2 young people finding something precious in the midst of chaos. "Jon," she begins, but the moment is broken by Theon's arrival. "The prisoners are ready for questioning," he reports, seemingly oblivious to the tension he has interrupted. The Ironborn captain might know who planned this attack. Jon reluctantly releases Daenerys' hand and stands. "I should interrogate him. These coordinated attacks, someone is pulling the strings." "I'll come with you," Daenerys says, calling her dragons down from the tree. They might be more talkative with dragonfire to encourage honesty. As they walk back toward the castle, their hands brush occasionally, sending sparks through both of them that have nothing to do with dragon magic. Neither speaks of what almost happened beneath the heart tree, but both feel the change between them, the shift from friendship to something deeper and more dangerous. Above them, 3 dragons circle in the starlight, their wings casting shadows that dance across ancient stones. The battle has been won, but the war is far from over. In the north, dead things walk and ancient evils stir. In the south, kings and queens play their games of power. But here in Winterfell, fire and ice have found common cause, and the realm may never be the same. The dragon's daughter and the bastard of Winterfell stand united against the darkness, their bond forged in battle and tempered by shared purpose. Winter is coming, but this time it brings dragons in its wake. And perhaps, just perhaps, that will be enough to hold back the night. The raven that brings news of the Red Wedding arrives at Winterfell on blood-dark wings, its message written in a hand that trembles with grief and rage. Maester Luwin reads it aloud in the great hall, his voice breaking as the words spill forth like poison. Robb Stark is dead, killed at the Twins under Guest, right by Walder Frey's treachery. Lady Catelyn murdered alongside him. The Northern army is broken, scattered to the winds. The king in the north is no more. The parchment slips from Luwin's fingers and flutters to the floor like a dying bird. In the silence that follows, the only sound is the crackling of the hearth fire and the distant cry of ravens in the rookery above. Daenerys feels the world tilt beneath her feet. Robb, laughing, strong, noble Robb, cut down like a dog at a wedding feast. The brother who taught her to hold a sword, who shared his dreams of spring with her, who called her sister when the rest of the world would see her burn. Gone. Around her, the 3 dragons sense her anguish and respond with cries of their own. In the 3 months since their hatching, they have grown to magnificent proportions. Drogon now stands as tall as a horse at the shoulder, his wingspan broad enough to cast shadows across the entire courtyard. Rhaegal and Viserion are nearly as large, their scales gleaming like jewels in the firelight. But it is the fire in their eyes that speaks to Daenerys now, the ancient rage of old Valyria that burns in their blood as surely as it burns in hers. They feel her pain, her fury, and they echo it back tenfold. "Who?" she asks, her voice deadly quiet. "Who planned this butchery?" Jon steps forward, the letter clutched in his white-knuckled fist. His face is a mask of grief and rage, but his voice remains steady. Tywin Lannister, Walder Frey, Rose Bolton. They orchestrated it together, broke sacred laws of hospitality to murder my brother under his own roof. "Robb trusted them," Daenerys whispers, and her voice carries a note that makes the dragons stir restlessly. "He went to them in good faith, and they butchered him like a sheep." The temperature in the hall begins to rise as her fury builds. Where her hands rest on Drogon's neck, wisps of smoke curl upward from his scales. The great dragon's eyes burn like molten gold, reflecting the fire that consumes his mother's heart. "We should send ravens," Luwin says desperately. "Rally the remaining lords. Gather what men we can. The north, still—" "The north bleeds," Daenerys interrupts, rising from her chair with fluid grace. Drogon rears up beside her, his head nearly touching the vaulted ceiling, his wings spread wide. "The north mourns, but the north will have its vengeance." Jon reaches for her arm, but she pulls away. "Daenerys, what are you thinking?" She turns to face him, and he sees something in her violet eyes that makes him step back. This is no longer the girl who laughed with him in the God's Wood, who shared quiet moments beneath the heart tree. This is the dragon's daughter, awakening to her full power and terrible purpose. "I am thinking that kings who break guest right deserve to burn," she says simply. "I am thinking that Walder Frey has lived too long in his stone tower, safe behind his walls and his words. I am thinking that dragons were made for more than defending castle walls." "You can't," Jon protests. "Drogon is large, yes, But you've never tried to ride him. The distance to the twins is nothing to a dragon. Daenerys moves to the great windows that look out over the courtyard, where afternoon light streams through the autumn sky. Fire cannot kill a dragon, Jon, and I am the blood of the dragon. She speaks a word in High Valyrian, and Drogon responds immediately. The great black dragon moves to the window, his powerful legs bunching beneath him as he prepares to leap. Without hesitation, Daenerys swings herself onto his back, her hands finding purchase among the ridged spines that run along his neck. "Daenerys, no!" Jon shouts, but she is already in the air. Drogon's wings beat once, twice, and they are soaring above Winterfell's towers. The sensation is beyond anything Daenerys could have imagined. The power of the great dragon beneath her, the wind whipping through her hair, the world spread out below, like a map waiting to be conquered. They climb higher, above the clouds, until the ground becomes a patchwork of green and brown far below. Drogon knows their destination without being told. The bond between them carries her rage and purpose directly into his ancient mind. South they fly, over the neck and into the riverlands, their shadow racing across field and forest. Settlements scatter below them like ants fleeing a fire, and men point skyward in terror and wonder. The dragons have returned to Westeros, and they bring death on black wings. Meanwhile, at the Twins, Walder Frey celebrates his victory with wine and song. The castle's great hall echoes with laughter as the ancient lord toasts the death of the young wolf and the breaking of northern power. Around him, his sons and grandsons feast on the spoils of treachery, dividing up Stark lands like carrion crows picking clean a corpse. "Robb Stark thought he was too good for my daughter," Frey cackles to his assembled court. "Well, let's see how good he looks with a crown of worms and a throne of dirt." The laughter dies as a shadow falls across the hall. Through the great windows, they can see something impossible. A dragon, black as midnight with eyes like molten gold, circling the twin towers like death incarnate. "7 hells," breathes Sir Stevron Frey. "That's not possible. Dragons are extinct." Walder Frey's rheumy eyes widen as he stares at the creature his treachery has awakened. "Get the crossbows," he croaks. "Kill that thing before—" The windows explode inward as Drogon's roar shakes the very foundations of the castle. Glass and stone rain down on the feast hall as the dragon forces his way inside, his wings beating furiously to maintain position in the confined space. And on his back sits Daenerys Targaryen, her silver hair streaming like a banner, her violet eyes burning with righteous fury. "I am Daenerys Stormborn," she declares, her voice carrying over the screams and chaos. "Daughter of Aerys Targaryen, sister to Robb Stark in all but blood. You broke guest right. You murdered my family. You have earned fire and death." Walder Frey stumbles backward, his face pale as parchment. "Mercy! I beg mercy!" "You showed none to Robb," Daenerys replies coldly. "Why should you receive what you would not give?" She speaks the word that ends worlds. Dracarys. Dragonfire fills the hall, white-hot and terrible. The ancient tapestries burst into flame, the wooden tables become infernos, and the men who thought themselves safe behind stone walls learn why the Targaryens ruled for 3 centuries. The fire spreads with supernatural speed, consuming everything it touches. Walder Frey's screams join those of his sons and grandsons as the flames engulf them all. Justice comes with wings of shadow and breath of fire, and it shows no mercy to those who showed none themselves. When the flames finally die, the great hall of the Twins is a charred ruin. Drogon rises through the smoke and shattered roof, carrying his mother away from the pyre she has made of treachery and murder. Behind them, the twin towers burn like candles against the darkening sky. News of the dragon's revenge spreads faster than wildfire across Westeros. From the wall to dawn, men speak in hushed voices of the Dayfire returned to punish the wicked. In King's Landing, Tywin Lannister stares at reports of the burning with calculating eyes. "So," he says quietly to his assembled council, "the dragon's daughter shows her claws at last." Sir Kevan Lannister shifts nervously in his seat. "My lord, if she has a dragon large enough to ride—" "Then the game has changed entirely," Tywin finishes. "We are no longer fighting a war between kings. We face the return of House Targaryen, backed by creatures that can turn castles to ash and armies to cinder." He moves to the window overlooking the city, his mind already racing through possibilities and contingencies. "Send ravens to every ally, every sellsword company, every man who owes us coin or favor. The dragons are small yet, but they will grow. We must be ready." In the distance, thunder rolls across the sky, though no clouds mar the heavens. Some say it is the sound of great wings beating, carrying death and fire to those who would stand against the dragon's daughter. At Winterfell, Jon Snow stands on the battlements and watches the southern sky, waiting for Daenerys' return. Rhaegal and Viserion perch beside him, their own eyes fixed on the horizon, where their brother flew to war. The dragons have entered the War of Five Kings at last, and the realm will never be the same. Fire and blood have returned to Westeros, and all who hear their names will learn to kneel or burn. The ravens that wing their way to King's Landing carry news that strikes terror into the heart of every man who hears it. Daenerys Targaryen flies south on Dragonback, her fury blazing hotter than the flames that consumed the twins. In her wake, Lannister armies scatter like leaves before a storm, their banners abandoned as men flee from the shadow of death overhead. Lord Tywin Lannister stands atop the walls of the Red Keep, his green eyes tracking the distant smoke that marks another burned baggage train. 3 days ago, his forces controlled the Riverlands. Now they retreat in disorder toward the capital, harried by creatures that turn steel to slag and courage to ash. "How many men have we lost?" he asks Sir Kevan, his voice betraying none of the cold fury that burns within him. 2,000 confirmed dead, another 1,000 missing, likely deserted. Kevan's face is grim. "The dragons struck our column near Maidenpool. Our archers couldn't reach them, and the Scorpion engines were destroyed before they could be deployed." Tywin nods grimly. He has underestimated the speed with which dragons could tip the balance of war. In his calculations, he had months to prepare defenses, to ready the realm for their eventual return. Instead, he has days, perhaps hours. "Sir Eilen," he calls to the King's Justice, who lurks in the shadows like a vulture. "Prepare the wildfire caches beneath the city. If we cannot hold King's Landing, we will not let her have it intact." Meanwhile, beyond the city walls, 3 dragons circle in the morning sky like harbingers of doom. Drogon is now massive, his wingspan broad enough to shadow entire buildings, his scales black as the void between stars. Rhaegal and Viserion have grown nearly as large, their bronze and cream scales gleaming in the sunlight as they wheel through the air with deadly grace. Jon Snow rides on Rhaegal's back, his hands gripping the dragon's neck spines as they soar above the Lannister encampments. The sensation still amazes him, the power of the great beast beneath him, the world spread out below like a living map. But there is no joy in this flight, only grim purpose. "There," Daenerys calls out from Drogon's back, pointing toward the sprawling military camp south of the city. "Tywin's main force, 20,000 men and the finest weapons gold can buy." The 3 dragons descend like falling stars, their roars echoing off the hills as they dive toward their targets. What follows is not a battle but a slaughter. Dragonfire washes over the camp in waves, turning canvas to ash and steel to molten ruin. Men scream and flee in every direction, their formations collapsing as panic spreads faster than the flames. Drogon lands in the center of the camp with an earth-shaking impact, his great head swinging from side to side as he bathes everything within reach in white-hot fire. Siege engines melt like candles, War horses bolt in terror, and proud banners become pillars of flame that pierce the morning sky. "Surrender!" Daenerys shouts over the chaos, her voice carrying across the burning field. "Lay down your arms, and you may yet live. Continue to serve the usurper, and burn!" Some men throw down their weapons immediately, falling to their knees in the mud and ash. Others, either braver or more foolish, continue to fight. They die in gouts of flame, their screams cut short as dragonfire consumes them entirely. The battle, if it can be called that, lasts less than an hour. When the flames finally die, the Lannister army is broken beyond repair. Those who survive stream toward King's Landing in panicked disorder, leaving behind weapons, supplies, and any pretense of military discipline. From the walls of the Red Keep, Tywin watches his life's work crumble to ash and bone. The army he spent decades building, the wealth he accumulated through careful planning, the reputation that made strong men tremble, all of it reduced to smoke on the wind. "Open the gates," comes a voice from behind him. Tywin turns to see his son, Jaime, approaching, his white cloak stained with soot and his gold hand catching the light. "Father, we cannot win this fight. Not with dragons." "No," Tywin replies quietly. "But we can make it costly for her." "Costly?" Jaime's green eyes flash with anger. "She has already burned half the riverlands. How much more blood must we spill for Joffrey's throne?" "It is not Joffrey's throne I protect," Tywin says coldly. "It is House Lannister's future. If we surrender now, we become her subjects forever. If we make her pay for her victory. If we resist, she burns the city to the ground," Jaime interrupts. "1 million people, father. Innocent men, women and children who have done nothing but have the misfortune to live in the capital." For a moment, the two lions stare at each other in silence. Then Tywin turns back to the approaching dragons, his face a mask of stone. "Send a raven under a banner of truce," he says finally. "Request parley with the Dragon Queen. Perhaps we can reach an accommodation." The meeting takes place on the field where the Lannister army died, beneath the shadow of Baelor's Sept in the distance. Tywin rides out with a small retinue, his golden armor gleaming despite the soot that stains everything around him. Across from him, Daenerys dismounts from Drogon's back, her silver hair flowing like liquid starlight. "Lord Tywin," she says formally, "I offer you the same terms you gave my family. Surrender and face the king's justice. And if I refuse, then you burn." Her violet eyes are hard as amethysts. "You orchestrated the murder of Robb Stark, broke the sacred laws of guest right, and spilled innocent blood to maintain your grip on power. Justice demands payment." Tywin studies her face, seeking weakness, finding none. This is not the frightened girl who hid in Winterfell's halls. This is the dragon's daughter, terrible in her beauty and implacable in her wrath. "What of my family? My children? Jaime may serve in my king's guard if he proves his loyalty." "Cersei," Daenerys pauses. "Cersei must answer for her part in my family's destruction. As for Tyrion, he has shown kindness to those beneath him. He may yet find a place in my service. And Joffrey, the usurper dies. His reign ends today." The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Tywin knows there is no bargaining with dragonfire, no negotiating with creatures that can turn armies to ash. He has played the Game of Thrones for 40 years, and now the board has burned beneath him. "I have one condition," he says finally. "Speak it. Allow me to face you in single combat. If I win, you spare my grandson. If I lose," he shrugs, "you have your justice." Daenerys almost laughs. "You would duel me? An old man against the blood of the dragon?" An old man who has nothing left to lose against a girl who believes herself invincible. Tywin draws his sword, the steel singing as it clears the scabbard. "What say you, Dragon Queen? Will you face me with steel or only with fire?" For a moment, Daenerys considers the challenge. Then Drogon's great head swings toward Tywin, and the old lion sees his death reflected in molten gold eyes. "I am not Aegon the Conqueror," Daenerys says quietly. "I do not seek to prove myself with sword and shield. I am fire made flesh, and I will take what is mine with fire and blood." She speaks a single word in High Valyrian, Dracarys. The dragonfire that ends Tywin Lannister burns hotter than any forge, bright enough to be seen from the walls of King's Landing. When it fades, only ash remains to mark where the most powerful man in Westeros once stood. The gates of King's Landing open without further resistance. The three dragons land in the courtyard of the Red Keep, their great wings casting shadows across stones that have seen the rise and fall of kings. Soldiers lay down their arms, courtiers kneel in submission, and servants flee to spread word throughout the 7 kingdoms. Daenerys Targaryen walks up the steps of the Iron Throne with fire in her wake and death behind her. The throne room is nearly empty, most of the court having fled when the dragons appeared. Only Joffrey remains, sitting on his throne of twisted swords with desperate defiance etched on his young face. "I am the king," he shouts as she approaches. "You are nothing but a pretender." Drogon's roar cuts him short, the sound echoing off the vaulted ceiling like thunder. Joffrey's words die in his throat as he stares into the dragon's burning eyes. "You are a usurper's son," Daenerys says simply. "Your reign is over." She does not give him the honor of dragonfire. Instead, she draws the Valyrian steel blade that Jon gave her, its edge gleaming in the light from the tall windows. The throne room has seen many executions, but none quite like this. When it is done, when the boy king's blood stains the steps of his stolen throne, Daenerys turns to face the Iron Throne itself, the seat of Aegon the Conqueror, symbol of Targaryen power, built from the swords of conquered enemies. She climbs the steps slowly, each footfall echoing through the silent hall. At the top, she turns and settles onto the throne that is hers by right of blood and conquest. The twisted metal is uncomfortable beneath her, just as it was meant to be, a reminder that ruling is not meant to be easy. Behind her, Drogon spreads his wings wide, and the sight sends a clear message to all who witness it. The dragons have returned to their rightful place. House Targaryen rules once more. The war is over. The fire has won. 6 months after the burning of the Red Keep, Queen Daenerys Targaryen sits upon the Iron Throne with 3 dragons coiled around its twisted metal like living guardians. The throne room bears scars from the battle that won her the crown. Scorch marks on ancient stones, new tapestries covering walls blackened by dragonfire, and windows that let in light where once there was only shadow. The realm has bent the knee, but not without cost. Lords who served the Lannisters have been replaced by those who proved their loyalty in fire and blood. The gold of Casterly Rock now flows to rebuild what war destroyed, while Lannister banners burn in pyres across the 7 kingdoms. Yet for all her power, for all the fear and respect her name commands, Daenerys finds her thoughts turning north with each passing day. Ravens arrive weekly from Winterfell, bearing news and requests. But more importantly, they carry reminders of the place where she learned what family truly means. "Your Grace," comes a voice from the throne room's entrance. Ser Jorah Mormont approaches, his weathered face bearing the satisfaction of a man who has lived to see his queen claim her birthright. Behind him walks a figure that brings a smile to Daenerys's lips. Jon Snow, though that name no longer fits him, strides across the hall with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. The royal decree that legitimized him as Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, hangs from the throne room walls alongside the great banners of the 7 kingdoms. Brother, Daenerys says warmly, using the word that means more to her than any title. Sister, Jon replies, and the dragons stir at his approach. Rhaegal, in particular, lifts his great bronze head to nuzzle against Jon's outstretched hand. The bond between them has only grown stronger in the months since the conquest, a connection that speaks to something deeper than mere training. How fares the North? Daenerys asks, though she knows the answer from their regular correspondence. It is an excuse to hear Jon's voice, to see the quiet strength that helped her claim her throne. Cold as ever, but safer than it has been in years. The wall holds, though the threats beyond it grow bolder with each passing month. Jon's expression grows serious. The Night's Watch sends word that massive armies of the dead gather in the deep woods. They test our defenses nightly now. Daenerys nods gravely. The victory over the Lannisters was only the beginning. Ancient evils stir beyond the wall, and even dragons may not be enough to hold back the darkness that comes with winter. Viserion flies north tomorrow, she says. He will join his brothers in defending the Watch. 3 dragons are better than 2 against enemies that do not feel fear. The men take courage from their presence, Jon agrees. When Drogon and Rhaegal soar above the wall, even the dead pause in their advance. They remember, perhaps, what dragonfire can do to flesh and bone. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of another party. 2 young women, escorted by northern guards, their faces bearing the mixture of joy and trepidation that comes with homecoming after long absence. Sansa Stark has grown into the beauty that was always promised, her auburn hair catching the light streaming through the windows, her blue eyes bright with intelligence sharpened by hardship. Beside her, Arya Stark looks like a wolf that has learned to walk among sheep, dangerous despite her small size, watchful despite the safety of the throne room. Your Grace, Sansa says formally, offering the deep curtsy due a queen. But Daenerys rises from the Iron Throne and descends the steps to embrace the girl she remembers playing with in Winterfell's halls. Sister, Daenerys whispers, and the word carries the weight of years and shared loss. Welcome home. The reunion that follows speaks to bonds forged in childhood and tempered by tragedy. These are the survivors of House Stark, scattered by war and brought together again by victory. They speak of Bran, still sleeping in Winterfell but showing signs of stirring, of Rickon growing strong and wild under Maester Luwin's care, of the North healing slowly from the wounds of war. Will you return with us? Arya asks, her voice carrying the directness that has always marked her character. Winterfell feels empty without its dragons. Daenerys considers the offer, as she has every day since claiming her throne. The Iron Throne is her birthright, but Winterfell is her home. The sept bells and southern flowers cannot compare to the godswood and winter roses that bloomed in her dreams. Soon, she promises, when the realm is stable, when the threats from beyond the wall are settled, I will come north again. Winterfell will always be my true home. 3 days later, the royal party departs King's Landing for the north. Daenerys travels not as a conqueror, but as a daughter returning home, her entourage small and her crown left behind in favor of the simple circlet she wore as a girl. Drogon and Viserion fly overhead, their shadows racing across field and forest as they carry their mother toward the place where her story began. Winterfell greets them with banners flying and horns sounding from the walls. The castle has been rebuilt and strengthened during Jon's lordship, its stones bearing new scars, but standing stronger than ever. In the courtyard, household staff and northern lords gather to welcome their queen, but Daenerys sees only the familiar faces of those who protected her secret for so many years. Maester Luwin, older and greyer but still vital, bows deeply as she dismounts. Sir Roderick Castle, returned from his ranging beyond the wall, offers her the same respectful nod he gave when she was a girl learning sword work in his training yard. "Welcome home, my lady," Lewin says, and the title carries more weight than any royal honorific. That evening, as the great hall fills with the sounds of feasting and laughter, Daenerys slips away to the place that has called to her across the miles and months. The ironwood door to the crypts opens at her touch, as it always has, and she descends into the familiar darkness with a torch in hand. The hidden chamber where her dragons hatched remains as she left it, though the air still carries the faint scent of dragonfire and magic. The ancient dragon skulls seem to smile in the torchlight, as if pleased to see what their legacy has accomplished. Here, in this place of death and memory, life first stirred in stone shells and changed the course of history. Daenerys kneels where she once placed 3 impossible eggs and speaks aloud to the listening darkness. "I am Daenerys of House Targaryen, blood of old Valyria, and fire made flesh. I am also Daenerys of Winterfell, daughter of the North in all but birth, sister to wolves, and friend to winter roses." Her voice echoes off stone walls that have heard kings' confessions and children's prayers. "I claim both legacies, both homes, both families. I am the bridge between fire and ice, between what was and what will be." Above her, she can hear the distant sounds of celebration, of a household that has learned to love both dragon and direwolf. Beyond the wall, ancient evils gather their strength for battles yet to come. In King's Landing, the Iron Throne waits for her return, symbol of the power she has claimed through fire and blood. But here, in the depths beneath Winterfell, surrounded by the bones of kings and the memory of miracles, Daenerys Targaryen finds the peace that has eluded her since the day she learned her true name. She is the Dragon Queen, the conqueror, the breaker of chains and burner of armies. She is also the girl who learned to laugh in northern halls, who found family among those who had every reason to hate her blood, who discovered that home is not a place of birth, but a place of belonging. The dragons circle overhead as she emerges from the crypts, their roars echoing across the winter sky like promises of protection. The North remembers, and what it remembers now is that dragons can be guardians as well as conquerors, that fire can warm as well as burn. Winter is coming, as it always does, but this time the North is ready. This time they have dragons to light their way through the darkness. The Game of Thrones is over. The Age of Dragons has begun anew, and in the halls of Winterfell, where ice and fire learned to dance together, a new song begins, one of family found and oaths kept, of magic returned and ancient debts repaid. That's our theory. The Seven Kingdoms are a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share,